A man lay on an operating table in Gibraltar, a tiny British territory at the southern tip of Spain, with cancer in his prostate. The surgeon who removed it never entered the room. He wasn't even in the same country. He sat at a console more than 1,500 miles away in London, his hands moving controls, and in Gibraltar, a set of robotic arms copied every motion exactly, cutting, stitching, and saving the man's life across a distance greater than the length of Italy. The machine that did it was built in China. And as of this week, it has been cleared to do the same thing across all of Europe. China just put a robot surgeon on the global market that lets a doctor operate on a patient from the other side of a continent. And the European Union, one of the strictest regulators on Earth, just stamped its approval. This isn't a prototype in a lab, it's already inside hospitals. And the reason China got here first traces back to a national plan set in motion at the very top, under Xi Jinping. If you enjoy videos about the technology quietly reshaping our world, hit like and subscribe so you never miss one. The machine is called Toumai, built by a Shanghai company named Microport Medbot. Picture 3 parts working as one. There's a console where the surgeon sits, gripping controls and looking into a high-definition view of the patient's insides. There's a tower of cameras and screens that turns the body into a crisp 3-dimensional image. And there's the patient cart, the part with the actual robotic arms, holding the instruments that go inside the body. The surgeon moves, the arms obey, filtering out the tiny tremors of a human hand to make cuts more precise than any person could manage alone. What makes Toumai different from the surgical robots the West already has is what connects those parts. High-speed 5G. The console and the arms don't have to be in the same building, the same city, or even the same country. They just need a fast enough signal. And that single fact changes what surgery can be. That Gibraltar operation wasn't a stunt. It was the first robotic remote surgery ever performed in the United Kingdom, with a London surgeon removing a cancer patient's prostate from over 2,000 kilometers away. Think about what that means in plain terms. A patient in a small town, far from any major hospital, no longer has to be near a top surgeon. The surgeon can be anywhere. The skill travels down a cable instead of the patient traveling to the skill. For a farmer hours from a city, for a soldier in a remote post, for a town that can't keep a specialist on staff, that's the difference between getting world-class care and getting none. Toumai now handles operations across urology, general surgery, chest surgery, and gynecology. And Microport says it has already shipped more than 300 of these systems to over 60 markets around the world. One of those operations was performed on a 76-year-old patient at a hospital in central China, exactly the kind of older patient for whom a gentler, more precise procedure can mean a faster recovery and a lower chance of complications. This is not a machine waiting for the future. It is already standing over real operating tables, in real hospitals, treating real people today. Now comes the part that turns a clever gadget into a genuine shift in power, the European stamp. To sell a medical device in Europe, you need what is called a CE mark. And earning it is brutal because Europe's safety rules are among the most demanding anywhere. Microport says Toumai is the first remote surgical robot in the world to win that approval. That is the detail that should make Western medical device giants uneasy. For decades, the global market for surgical robots was effectively owned by one American company, whose machine became so dominant that robotic surgery and its brand name were almost the same thing. A Chinese challenger did not just build a rival, it built one with a capability the incumbent does not lead in, remote operation, and then walked it straight through Europe's front door. So how did China pull ahead in something as demanding as cutting into the human body? It didn't happen by luck, and it didn't happen overnight. Under Xi Jinping, Beijing made high-end medical technology a national priority, pushing for homegrown machines to replace the expensive imported ones Chinese hospitals had always depended on. The government poured support into companies like Microport. Hospitals were encouraged to adopt and test the local robots at a scale no Western system could match. And every operation generated data to make the next version better. China also happens to have built the most advanced and widespread 5G network on the planet. The exact backbone a remote surgery needs to work without a dangerous lag between the surgeon's hand and the robot's blade. A country that blanketed itself in fast wireless, then aimed its industrial machine at medical robotics, was always going to be the one to crack surgery at a distance first. The pieces were in place before most of the world realized there was a race. Consider the contrast. In the West, a hospital might perform a careful handful of trials before a new device spreads. In China, a single robot model can be rolled out across dozens of hospitals at once, each surgery feeding lessons back to the engineers, so the machine improves at a speed Western approval cycles cannot match. Volume is its own kind of advantage, and China has more patients, more hospitals, and more willingness to deploy early than anywhere else on Earth. And the robot was only half of what China announced this week. On the very same day, a Chinese clinical artificial intelligence model called Baichuan M4 topped a major healthcare benchmark, a kind of medical exam for AI that was built by OpenAI, the American company behind ChatGPT. In other words, a Chinese medical AI outscored the world's leading rivals on a test designed in America. Put the two together, and the strategy comes into focus. The robot is the hands. The AI is the mind. China is building both ends of the future of medicine at once. The machine that can physically operate anywhere, and the artificial brain that can help decide what to do. That combination is what makes this more than a single product launch. It's a country assembling an entire medical system that doesn't need a Western part in it. This is the moment to be straight about the limits, because the hype around remote surgery can run ahead of the reality. A robot like Toumai does not operate on its own. There is always a human surgeon driving every single motion. It is a tool that extends a doctor's reach, not a machine that replaces the doctor's judgment. And remote surgery across long distances comes with real risks that haven't vanished. If the network hiccups, if the signal drops for even a moment during a delicate cut, the consequences could be severe, which is why these procedures still demand backup plans and a surgical team physically present with the patient. The whole thing hinges on lag, the split-second delay between the surgeon moving his hand and the blade moving inside the patient. Over a good 5G link, that delay can be a tiny fraction of a second, fast enough to feel instant, but stretch the distance far enough or hit a weak signal, and that gap grows into something dangerous when a scalpel is involved. Winning the European CE mark is a major milestone, but it's a license to sell, not proof that thousands of long-distance operations have already been done safely at scale. The technology is real and it works, but it's at the beginning of its rollout, not the end. Anyone promising that robot surgeons are about to flood every hospital tomorrow is getting ahead of the facts. But here's why this still matters enormously, even with those caveats. The direction is the story. For most of modern history, the best medicine has been trapped by geography, locked inside wealthy cities and elite hospitals, out of reach for the billions of people who don't live near them. A surgeon who can operate from 1,500 miles away breaks that lock. It points toward a world where expertise flows across borders like electricity, where a single brilliant specialist could treat patients on 3 continents in a single day, where distance stops deciding who lives and who dies, and the country positioned to build, sell, and define that world, to set its standards and supply its machines to those 60-plus markets and counting, is increasingly China, not the West. Whoever provides the tools of the next era of medicine gains not just money, but influence over how the whole world heals. And the economics cut China's way. Western surgical robots and their single-use instruments can cost a hospital millions to buy and run, pricing them out of reach for much of the world. A cheaper Chinese machine that can be operated remotely doesn't just compete on price, it reaches places the expensive ones never could, from rural county hospitals at home to developing nations that could never afford a full robotic surgery suite of their own. So where does this go from here? Expect China to push Toumai and machines like it into more countries, more types of surgery, and lower price points, the same way it drove down the cost of solar panels and electric cars until it dominated those markets too. Expect the medical AI and the surgical robots to grow closer together until the line between the machine that operates and the intelligence that guides it begins to blur. And expect the West, which long assumed it would always lead in advanced medicine, to find itself reacting to Chinese standards rather than setting its own. The image to hold on to is the one we started with: a surgeon in one country, a patient in another, and a Chinese-built machine bridging the gap between them, cutting with a steadiness no human hand can match. That used to be science fiction. As of this week, with Europe's approval in hand, it's a product you can buy, and the rest of the world is now operating in a future China reached first.